Hello, dear hearts. This is Grandma Hour here, sitting with you tonight just like always. If you're new here, welcome home. Pull up a chair, wrap yourself in something soft, and let me tell you a true story that still brings tears to my eyes every time I whisper it. And if you've been with me a while, thank you for coming back. You're the reason I keep these old memories alive. Tonight's story is called He Signed Everything Over Until the Second Envelope. Take a slow breath with me, and let's begin. When my son handed me that first envelope, I felt a quiet ache in my chest, like the world was shifting under my feet. He said, "Mom, Dad signed everything over to you. The house, the savings, all of it." I nodded, trying to smile, but inside, I was crumbling, remembering the years we'd built together, now reduced to papers in my hand. I sat there in our old kitchen, the one with the faded blue curtains I'd sewn myself decades ago. The light from the window fell soft on the table, and I could hear the distant hum of cars outside. My fingers trembled as I opened it, seeing his signature at the bottom, strong and steady, just like he used to be. But then, there was a second envelope tucked inside, unmarked, waiting like a hidden whisper. That second envelope changed everything. It held a letter from him, words he'd written in secret, pouring out truths we'd both buried deep. I didn't cry right away. I just stared at the pages, feeling the weight of regret settle over me like a warm blanket on a cold night. You see, life has a way of surprising you when you think it's all figured out. I'd spent so long believing our story was simple. Love, family, quiet days fading into each other. But that day, with those envelopes in my lap, I realized how much we'd hidden, even from ourselves. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was a deep, calm sadness, mixed with a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could still find peace in the truth. When my son handed me that first envelope, I felt a quiet ache in my chest, like the world was shifting under my feet. He said, "Mom, Dad signed everything over to you. The house, the savings, all of it." I nodded, trying to smile, but inside I was crumbling, remembering the years we built together, now reduced to papers in my hand. I sat there in our old kitchen, the one with the faded blue curtains I'd sewn myself decades ago. The light from the window fell soft on the table, and I could hear the distant hum of cars outside. My fingers trembled as I opened it, seeing his signature at the bottom, strong and steady, just like he used to be. But then there was a second envelope tucked inside, unmarked, waiting like a hidden whisper. That second envelope changed everything. It held a letter from him, words he'd written in secret, pouring out truths we'd both buried deep. I didn't cry right away. Instead, I just stared at the pages, feeling the weight of regret settle over me like a warm blanket on a cold night. You see, life has a way of surprising you when you think it's all figured out. I'd spent so long believing our story was simple. Love, family, quiet days fading into each other. But that day, with those envelopes in my lap, I realized how much we'd hidden, even from ourselves. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was a deep, calm sadness, mixed with a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find peace in the truth. I remember closing my eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of the coffee I'd made earlier, now gone cold. The house felt so empty without him, but his words were there, bridging the gap we'd let grow. And as I began to read, the memories flooded back, pulling me into the past where it all started. My name is Eleanor, and I've always been the quiet type. The one who holds things together with a smile and a cup of tea. I grew up in a small town where folks knew each other by name and life moved slow, like honey dripping from a spoon. My parents ran a little bakery, and I learned early on that love shows up in the simple things. Fresh bread on the table, a hug after a long day. When I met Thomas, I was just 22, working at the local library, stacking books, and dreaming of a family of my own. He came in one rainy afternoon, looking for a book on gardening, his coat dripping water on the floor. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice soft and kind. "Do you have anything on growing roses? My mom loves them." I smiled and led him to the shelf, our hands brushing as I handed him the book. From that day, we were inseparable. Thomas was a mechanic, with hands that could fix anything, and a heart that made me feel safe. We married a year later in a simple church ceremony, with wildflowers from the field behind my parents' house. Our first home was a tiny cottage, painted yellow, with a porch where we'd sit and watch the sunset. Life felt full of promise then, like every day was a new page in a story we were writing together. We had our son, James, 2 years into our marriage. He came into the world on a stormy night, crying loud and strong, and Thomas held my hand the whole time, whispering, "You're doing great, Ellie. He's perfect." James grew up fast, with his father's laugh and my love for stories. We read to him every night, tucked under blankets, the three of us close and warm. As the years went on, Thomas built his own garage business, fixin' cars for neighbors and saving every penny for our future. I stayed home mostly, tending the garden, baking pies, and making sure our little world ran smooth. Money was tight sometimes, but we never went without. "We've got each other," Thomas would say, pulling me close. "That's all that matters." Our days were simple. Mornings with coffee on the porch, afternoons in the garden, evenings around the dinner table sharing stories. James would tell us about school, his eyes bright with excitement. Thomas would listen, nodding proudly, and I'd feel my heart swell. It was a good life, the kind where love grows quiet but deep, like roots under the soil. But even in those happy times, there were small shadows. Thomas worked long hours, coming home tired, his hands stained with oil. I'd worry about him, but he'd just smile and say, "I'm fine, Ellie. For you and James, I'd work forever." I believed him then, not seeing the weariness building in his eyes. We moved to a bigger house when James was 10, one with a backyard for him to play. It had a kitchen I loved, with windows overlooking the trees. We'd host family gatherings there, Thanksgivings with turkey and laughter, Christmases with lights twinkling. My sister would come with her kids, and the house would fill with noise and joy. Thomas was always the one carving the meat, making everyone feel welcome. Looking back, those were the golden years. We traveled a bit too, a road trip to the mountains, where we hiked and picnicked by streams. James caught his first fish there, and Thomas taught him how to build a fire. See, son, life's about these moments, he'd say. I captured it all in photos, tucking them away in albums that now sit dusty on the shelf. But life isn't just the good parts. Thomas's business grew, and with it came stress. He'd stay late at the garage, fixing one more car, chasing one more dream. I'd wait up for him, the clock ticking slow in the quiet house. You need rest, I'd tell him gently. He'd kiss my forehead and promise to slow down soon. James went off to college eventually, studying engineering like his dad. The house felt bigger without him, but we adjusted. Thomas and I found new rhythms, walks in the park, quiet dinners, rediscovering each other. We've done well, Ellie, he'd say, holding my hand. And I believed we had. Yet deep down, I sensed a distance growing, like a crack in the foundation you don't notice until it's wide. Thomas started forgetting little things, anniversaries, promises. I'd brush it off, telling myself it was just age. But looking back, it was the beginning of something we couldn't see coming. The tension started small, like whispers you ignore at first. Thomas began spending more time at the garage, even on weekends. I'd pack him lunch, hoping he'd come home early. But the nights stretched long. Business is booming, he'd say with a tired smile. It'll pay off soon. I tried to understand. Our savings were growing, and James was doing well in school. But the house felt lonelier. I'd sit by the window, watching the street lights flicker on, wondering if I was imagining the change in him. One evening, he came home late again, smelling faintly of something sweet. Not oil, but perfume maybe? I pushed the thought away, blaming my mind for wandering. James noticed too when he visited. Dad seems distracted, he'd say over coffee. I'd nod in reply. He's just working hard for us. But inside, a quiet worry settled, like fog rolling in slow. Then came the arguments, soft at first, over money. Thomas wanted to invest in new tools for the garage, but I worried about risks. We need to think of retirement, I'd say calmly. He'd sigh and agree, but his eyes looked far away. We never raised voices. It was always quiet words, laced with unspoken hurt. One day I found a receipt in his pocket for a dinner I hadn't been part of. My heart skipped, but I didn't ask. Instead, I baked his favorite apple pie, hoping the familiar taste would bring us back. He ate it gratefully, but the silence between us grew. James got married around then to a lovely girl named Sarah. Their wedding was beautiful, under a tent in our backyard, with lights strung like stars. Thomas gave a toast, his voice steady. to love it lasts. I smiled, but felt a pang, wondering about our own. After the wedding, things shifted more. Thomas traveled for work conferences, coming back with stories that felt rehearsed. I'd listen, nodding, but my mind raced with questions I couldn't voice. "How was the trip?" I'd ask. "Good," he'd reply, short and simple. The distance built like layers of dust. We'd sit at dinner, talking about weather or news, avoiding the deeper things. I started gardening more, finding peace in the soil. But even there, thoughts of him lingered. Was he unhappy? Had I missed something? Sarah and James moved nearby, and we'd visit often. Seeing their young love reminded me of us once. But Thomas seemed withdrawn, even with them. "You okay, Dad?" James asked one day. Thomas just patted his shoulder. "Fine, son. Just tired." I tried to bridge it. One night, I suggested a weekend away. Just us. "Like old times," I said softly. He agreed, but canceled last minute for work. The disappointment sat heavy, but I didn't push. Instead, I walked alone in the park, leaves crunching underfoot, feeling the first real cracks in my heart. Money talks started too. Thomas mentioned expanding the business, borrowing against the house. "It's a sure thing," he said. I hesitated but trusted him. We signed papers together, his hand steady on mine. But afterward, doubt crept in. Was this for us or something else? Friends noticed my quietness. At book club, they'd ask, "Everything all right at home?" I'd smile and say yes, but inside, the worry grew. Thomas's phone would buzz late at night, and he'd step outside to answer. "Work," he'd explain. I wanted to believe him. Then, a small betrayal. I saw a text on his phone by accident from a woman named Linda. "Missed you today." My world tilted. I didn't confront him. Instead, I cried quietly in the bathroom, water running to hide the sound. How had we come to this? The tensions rose slow, like a pot simmering. We'd argue softly about time, trust. "I feel alone," I'd whisper. He'd hold me and promise change. But days later, it was the same. James sensed it, calling more often. "Mom, talk to me." I'd say we were fine, protecting him. One evening, Thomas came home early, surprising me. We cooked together, laughing like before. Hope flickered. But the next week, he was distant again. The cycle wore on me, but I held on, believing love could mend. Arising conflicts deepened as months turned to years. Thomas's trips became frequent, and the garage thrived. But our home felt hollow. I'd find myself staring at old photos, tracing his young face, wondering where that man went. Sarah had their first child, our granddaughter Lily. The birth brought joy, tiny hands, Soft cries. Thomas held her, eyes misty. "She's beautiful," he said. For a moment, we connected, sharing proud glances. But soon, he back to work. Missing family dinners. I confronted him gently one night. "Thomas, what's happening to us?" He sat heavy in his chair, sighing. "Ellie, I'm sorry. Work's overwhelming." But his eyes avoided mine. I nodded, heart aching, and let it go. Anger wasn't my way. Sadness was. James pulled me aside during a visit. "Mom, Dad's changing. Talk to him." I promised I would, but fear held me back. With the truth broke us. Then the financial strain hit. Thomas invested big in a new venture, but it faltered. Bills piled up, and he worked harder. "We'll get through," he'd say. But I saw the stress lines on his face, the way he rubbed his temples late at night. I started working part-time at the library again, to help. It felt good, being out. But home pulled me back. Thomas appreciated it, but the gap widened. Phone calls from unknown numbers increased, and he'd whisper into the receiver. One day, I found a hotel key in his jacket. My hands shook as I held it. "Thomas?" I asked calmly that evening. He looked guilty. "It's nothing, Ellie. A mix-up." I wanted to believe, but doubt seated deep. Our talks turned to whispers of regret. "I love you," he'd say. "I know," I'd reply. But the words felt thin. James and Sarah worried, inviting us over more. Lily's laughter helped, a bright spot in the gray. But the conflicts peaked when money vanished from our joint account. Thomas explained it as business expenses, but numbers didn't add. "Trust me," he pleaded. I did, but my heart whispered warnings. Friends shared stories of similar troubles, marriages fraying with age. I listened, feeling less alone, but the pain lingered. Nights, I'd lie awake, hearing his steady breath, wondering if he dreamed of someone else. The business recovered slowly, but our bond didn't. We moved like shadows around each other, polite but distant. "Good morning," he'd say. "Coffee's ready," I'd answer. Simple, but empty. James confronted his dad one day. "You're hurting Mom." Thomas nodded sadly. "I know, son. I'll fix it." Hope rose again, fragile as a flower in wind. Yet the small hurts accumulated. Forgotten birthdays, unanswered calls. I gardened more, finding solace in blooms. "Roses for you," I'd think, remembering our start. The rising tension felt like a slow storm building, clouds gathering without thunder. I prayed quietly for clarity, for us to find our way back. But life had other plans, leading to that turning point I never saw coming. It all came to a head on a crisp autumn afternoon. Thomas came home early, his face pale, carrying a folder of papers. He sat me down at the kitchen table, the one where we'd shared so many meals. "Ellie, we need to talk," he said, his voice trembling just a bit. I poured us tea, my hand steady despite the knot in my stomach. He opened the folder, revealing documents, divorce papers, asset divisions. My breath caught. Why? I asked softly. No anger, just deep sorrow. He looked down, fingers tracing the table's edge. I've been seeing someone. Linda, from work. It's serious. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt a quiet break inside, but I didn't yell. Instead, I nodded, tears welling slow. How long? I whispered. A year, he admitted, eyes meeting mine with regret. I didn't mean to hurt you. You've been everything to me. But the pain was there, sharp yet calm, like a wave washing over. We talked for hours, voices low. He explained his unhappiness, the drift we both felt. I thought work would fill it, he said, but it didn't. I shared my loneliness, the nights waiting. It was honest, raw, but without blame. He wanted to sign everything over, the house, savings, even the garage. You deserve it all, he said, for the life you gave me. I shook my head. It's ours, Thomas, not just mine. But he insisted, pen in hand. James arrived later, called by his dad. What's going on? He asked, face worried. Thomas explained, tears in his eyes. James hugged me tight. Mom, I'm here. We sat as a family, broken but together in that moment. Thomas signed the papers that night, his signature final. But as he handed them to me, he slipped in a second envelope. Read this later, he murmured, when you're ready. I tucked it away, heart heavy. He left quietly, bags packed, door closing soft behind him. The house echoed with silence. I sat alone, staring at the envelopes, feeling the weight of 40 years unraveling. The next days blurred. I walked through routines, watering plants, making tea, but inside, emotions swirled, calm and deep. Regret for not speaking sooner, sadness for what was lost. James checked on me daily. Dad's staying with a friend, he'd say. He asks about you. I'd smile faintly. Tell him I'm okay. Then, one rainy evening, I opened the second envelope. It was a letter, pages filled with his handwriting. Dear Ellie, it began. I couldn't say this face to face. He poured out his heart, how he'd lost himself in work, how Linda was a mistake born of loneliness. But more, he wrote of our love, the memories that shaped him. You were my anchor, he said. I regret leaving you adrift. Tears fell then, soft and steady. He revealed a secret. He'd been diagnosed with early dementia months ago, hiding it from fear. I pushed away to spare you, he wrote, but I was wrong. The turning point hit like lightning in quiet. Not just betrayal, but his hidden pain. I felt empathy flood in, mixing with hurt. Why hadn't he trusted me? I called James, voice steady. Read this, I said, handing him the letter. His eyes widened. Mom, this changes things. We talked late, piecing it together. Thomas had signed over everything, thinking he'd fade soon, wanting to protect us. But the letter begged forgiveness, asked for understanding. I love you still, it ended. That night, I lay awake, rain tapping the window, realizing our story wasn't over. The breaking point brought truth, raw and real. The aftermath unfolded slow, like dawn after a long night. I reached out to Thomas the next day, calling his number with steady hands. "We need to talk," I said calmly. He agreed, voice soft with surprise. We met at our old park bench, leaves swirling around us. He looked older, regret in his eyes. "Ellie, I'm sorry," he began. I held up the letter. "Why hide this? The diagnosis." He sighed deep. "I didn't want to burden you. Thought leaving would make it easier." I shook my head gently. "We're in this together, Thomas. Always were." We talked for hours, unpacking years of silence. No blame, just understanding. He shared doctor visits, the fear of forgetting. "I remember us, though," he said. "Every moment." James joined us later, bringing Lily. Her giggles lightened the air. "Grandpa," she called, toddling over. Thomas held her, tears shining. "Family," he whispered. We decided against divorce then. Instead, counseling. Quiet sessions where we rebuilt. "One day at a time," the therapist said. We agreed. Thomas moved back home gradual, starting with dinners, then nights. The house filled again, not with old ease, but new honesty. I'd remind him of appointments. He'd hold my hand, grateful. Money matters sorted too. We kept the assets joint, planning for his care. "Together," I said. He nodded, smiling faint. Sarah helped, cooking meals, sharing stories. "You're strong, Mom," she'd say. I felt it then, a quiet strength born of pain. Challenges came. Thomas's memory slips, forgetting names, dates. But we'd laugh soft, turning them to moments. "Remember our first date?" I'd ask. He'd grin, roses and rain. Forgiveness grew natural, like healing a wound. No rush, just presence. Nights we'd sit on the porch, stars above, sharing silence, comfortable now. James's family grew closer, visits frequent. Lily learned to walk in our garden, chasing butterflies. Life wove back together, threads mended. Through it all, I felt realization deepen. Love isn't perfect, but enduring. We faced his illness head on. Doctors, plans, but with hope. The resolution wasn't dramatic, just steady steps toward peace. Thomas's letter became our touchstone, reminder of truths shared. As time passed, we found a new rhythm, one laced with acceptance and warmth. Thomas's condition progressed slow, but we cherished the good days. I'd read to him from old books, his head on my shoulder, just like with James long ago. One evening, as the sun set golden, he turned to me. "Ellie, thank you for staying." I squeezed his hand. Where else would I be? James and Sarah had another child, a boy named after Thomas. The birth brought fresh joy, tiny cries echoing hope. We gathered as family, stronger for the storms. Looking back, That second envelope wasn't just words. It was a bridge back to us. It taught me that secrets hurt, but truth heals, even when it comes late. Life's lesson, subtle and true. Hold on to love with open hands. Forgive with open hearts. In the end, it's the quiet strengths that endure, weaving us together through every envelope life sends. And so, our story continues, calm and heartfelt, in the home we built, with the family we love. Peace found us, wrapped. And that, my sweet friends, is our story for tonight. Sometimes the hardest envelopes to open are the ones that bring us back together. If this touched your heart even a little, please tap that little heart below. Leave a comment and tell me, have you ever received a letter that changed everything? And if you haven't already, come sit with me every week. Click subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. We're a family here at Grandma Hour, and there's always room for one more. Take care of your hearts until next time. I love you all so very much. Good night, darlings. Sleep gentle.